You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's, what do we call this? Are we calling it SEO and IPA? Are we calling it on the podcast?
Is it September's SEO month?
All right. We're keeping
SEO
it.
and IPA.
Hello, everybody. This is September. If you've been paying attention, September is SEO month, and this is a very special edition of the REI Marketing Nerds podcast because I am here with Patti Dalessio. Now, Patti Dalessio. If you have not listened to the other episodes, you have been missing out. So first thing you need to do, pause this episode, go back, download our previous 2 episodes from September where we get into SEO with this wonderful woman. But if you don't know who we're talking about, Patti Dalessio is the head of the SEO division here at AdWordsNerds.com. She is one of my oldest SEO friends. I think I can say that. And a wonderful person and coming on to help us improve the SEO for real estate investors everywhere. Patti, my wonderful friend, how are you this morning? It's about 8:30 a.m. in Connecticut where we are. Well, you're not in Connecticut, but in Connecticut. So how are you this wonderful morning?
I am terrific.
You are terrific.
I'm terrific. Yeah. I'm excited. It's officially SEO month, right? Because we're recording this in September. So
yes, children everywhere wait with bated breath for SEO season to roll around. The leaves are changing. The air has that crisp feeling of leads coming in for free from Google, and it's a wonderful time of year. My favorite time of year.
Yes,
SEO September. So. We have done a lot of kind of digging into SEO in general. This week is a very important one because we are actually going to get into the strategy and tactics. Now, part of the reason that we spent kind of 2 full episodes dealing with, why SEO is important, dealing with some of the mindsets around SEO, dealing with some of the mistakes that people make with SEO, is because a lot of those things are going to impact you before you even get started, right? I mean, if you get started, you decide that SEO is great and you hit the ground running, but you're doing the wrong things. Well, you're going to, basically be driving your car in the wrong direction. You're not going to get where you want to go, right? So we kind of had to deal with that stuff. But, as we were kind of designing these episodes, we sort of realized hey, we haven't actually talked about what you should do, like what SEO actually is comprised of. So this episode, I'm really going to kind of be interviewing Patti, and we're going to be digging into the model that she and Jeremiah, who works with us, have developed for SEO for real estate investors. And something that's very important for people to understand is that for pretty much everywhere that you look, if you are looking up sort of strategy and tactics for real estate investors to do organic marketing like this, what you are getting is the stuff that works in other industries just kind of applied to real estate investors. And what Patti found when she first came on the team and started doing SEO for our clients, we very quickly found that what works for other industries doesn't necessarily work for investors. And so we've really had to throw out the old playbook and focus on just things that we've tested in the wild that we know work for investors. We know work right now for top real estate investing websites across the country. And Patti's really been the sort of spearheading that whole project. So this is going to be a really, really impactful episode. I highly recommend that you listen to this multiple times, that you listen all the way through, take notes, etc., because we are going to get into it. And frankly, you can't get this information anywhere other than paying me thousands of dollars to tell it to you. So we are opening the curtain. We are getting into it. So, Patti, are you pumped?
Yes.
Okay, you don't sound pumped.
Ready to go.
Okay. That's about as pumped as Patti gets. All right. So
like a coffee.
yeah. So we have let's kind of start at the beginning. So we've kind of broken down the SEO process into 4 distinct phases. Okay.
Right.
And just like as a general definition, for if you're just tuning in now, right? It's like SEO is anything you're doing to your website or anything you're doing in general to rank your website more highly in Google so that people find you and they contact you and they're like, hey, I want to sell you mine, right? So we've broken this process down into 4 kind of unique phases. There's the strategy phase, the local SEO phase, the on-page SEO phase, and the link building phase. So we have these kind of 4 phases mapped out. So let's start with strategy. And you are in many ways our head strategist. So you do a lot of kind of strategy stuff with our clients. You've done a lot of strategy stuff with clients in your own business before you worked with AdWords Nerds. So when we think about SEO strategy in general, like if someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to develop an SEO strategy, what are the first few things that you think about or need to know in order to help that person be effective with their SEO?
Yeah. So it's need to know, I think, is where to start. So there's a baseline tracking that you need. So there's a data collection piece, that problem that you have to solve. So what we're doing here is first putting the tracking ability that you need on your website such that you know what the baseline is. What are we ranking for today? How many impressions are coming in? Who's clicking on what parts of the website, right? Like all of this data, you may not be set up to gather, right? So you need to make sure that you've got the foundational step of, and we're talking about like things like Google Analytics and some special tools that you would need to do the ranking. So when we say ranking, I mean, this is the keyword. Where am I in the ecosystem of Google? Am I on page 1? Am I on beyond page 5? Right? So you need to know where you're starting from before you do kind of any further strategic.
Right. Like you need to know where you are in order to figure out where you want to go and in order to figure out if what you're doing is working. Right. So if people don't have that stuff in place, so if I'm a real estate investor and I don't have Google Analytics, for example, which is free.
Yeah.
Is there value, even if I don't know how to do SEO, I don't know how to read it, is there value in me going through the work of like getting it on my website and so on, even if I personally don't know how to use it yet?
Yeah. So I would say, there's 2 ways that's super helpful. One is you're supposed to plant the tree like 10 years ago, right? So you put the code on it today, it will help. If you don't figure out how to read this or take the time to take that in house, a future SEO or a future resource may be able to help you with that, right? So if you add the code, add this tracking ability now, it'll start gathering data for you. It's free. It's relatively simple to install. We know that our friends at Carrot and some of these other REI Black Book make it relatively easy to install this code on the site, right? So if you don't have it, I would install it for sure.
Okay.
So one is that. The other is you can, take some tutorials, YouTube's a great resource, but you can figure out how to read, some of the basic reports within analytics.
So if I'm, you mentioned like there are like things you want to know. So if I'm an investor is trying to figure out kind of like basically like where am I? Right? Like what are the really like key metrics you look at to figure out where an investor is when they come in? Like you don't know anything about them. You want to know where they're at with their SEO.
Right. I would use 2 tools and then which are free. And then I would set up, a paid tool. Honestly, unfortunately, some of the rankings specifically you have to pay for.
Yeah.
But I would say analytics is going to tell you things like click-throughs, what people are doing on your site. It would tell you, or traffic, where your traffic's coming from. You can kind of see that whether it was from, Facebook or organic.
Or if you have traffic at all, I guess, too.
If you have traffic at all, if anyone's visiting your website. Another kind of important tool, I don't know how much we want to get into this, but it's something called Google Search Console. That's also another free resource that gives you some additional data that shows you exactly what Google is showing you for. So it shows you impressions for some specific keywords. And that will actually tell you, if you kind of pull the lens back and look at that as a collective, all these keywords are what Google thinks it should show you for, right? That's an impression. And it kind of tells you, does Google understand me? Does it understand my site? Is it putting me in for words that I want to show for that makes sense, right? And sometimes we find clients with interesting, creative branding names that could get a little bit, could confuse Google a little bit.
Like what, for example? Like if my name's like Dapper Dan's Dandy House Buying Diablo.
Yeah. So, we've had clients, I don't know if we want to get into it too deep, but whose name was actually the name of a very popular game when we were kids. And then it kind of was showing for all these variations of that game.
Mm-hmm.
The game where the animal would come out and its face, it would grab the balls. I kind of don't want to say what it is.
Monopoly. Yeah.
It was a hungry animal. It was a hungry animal. And the hungry animal name was getting kind of like confused with some other ideas. But you know what I'm saying? So, but it's not horrible. It's, they can show you for other things as well, but it could get like a little bit funny, and you can solve that issue. But without something like a Google Search Console, you kind of can't see what Google's showing you for. And Google doesn't show you all the keywords, right? Because Google's algorithm is a bit of a black box. So
I think the key takeaway there, right, is like you want to know, even if you haven't done any SEO yet, or you haven't really worked on this, it's very possible that you are already ranking for things. And if you're ranking for things you want to rank for, that's a great indication of what you should put some work into, right? Because you're like, hey, I'm already doing pretty well and I barely tried. Or it could be that, like, if you just happen to be, named Doug Oreo, and your Oreo home buyers company is ranking for Oreo cookies, well, like, hey, that might be interesting to know too, because maybe you got to do some work there. Maybe there's something you got to do about that. So I think we want to know kind of where we're at, what we're ranking for. Are we getting traffic? Are people using the site the way that we think? Now, if you come in, at what point or to what extent do you worry about what people's competitors are doing? So it's a very common thing where an investor will come in and say, hey, I'm in a competitive market. There's this guy or this woman in my market and she spends $50 million a month on SEO or whatever, right? So like, how much do you worry about that? Or what do you look at when you look at people's competitors?
I always ask, who are your competitors? Who are your top 3 competitors? And we use some tools to track them against, baseline them against. So again, we're talking baseline, right? So right now we have a baseline, we're gathering our data, and then we have who our top three competitors are.
Right.
And everyone knows. I rarely get, I don't know, you tell me.
Everybody's seen it. They're at the local REI, you're stink eyeing them from across the room because they stole a deal from you or whatever. Yeah, everyone knows. Everyone knows who it is.
All day long. And then they're friends, sometimes they know each other, they're friends. So it's pretty funny. I like to know who the competitors are because and then I like to see exactly, kind of what they're doing. Why are they ranking for these words? What pages are ranking for these keywords that I want to go after? And see kind of, what they're doing. We haven't seen too much like shockingly impressive moves that competitors have made, to be honest. It's kind of, I don't know. So we monitor those competitors. We monitor the geolocation that you're in, because this is really, what we're talking about. When the rubber meets the road, it's really about, the city that you're in and ranking within those locations for those actionable, high traffic, high value keywords. And, everyone's kind of vying after those sort of same keywords. But I think, what we've been able to do when it comes to keywords, I know I'm jumping to another question, but when it comes to those keywords is we have, I would argue, the most data in this industry. Mm-hmm. Keywords. I mean, I have a list of about 35 keywords that I really care about. And that's really what we go after. And when we're talking about competitors, we're all going after those same similar terms, right? So that's what I look for. Is anyone doing anything particularly new or particularly creative or writing any kind of content that Google may find, better than ours, right?
Yeah. I think the interesting thing to take away from that too is that it's very rare for us to go out and find a competitor that's just crushing it. Like most markets, the people who are on top in that market, they're on top mostly because they've been doing it longer, not necessarily because they've been doing an amazing job. Mm-hmm. So even if you feel like, SEO Sally's been doing this forever and she's kind of on top, and it's often not as difficult as you might think, to upset that balance and kind of disrupt that and get your website in there, right? Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but I think a lot of people have this sense of like, oh, I'm competing against this behemoth and I'm never going to be able to beat this person. And it's just not necessarily true. So
I would say too that usually the competitors fall under two categories. One is there's a couple national brands that we know that can be playing in these local arenas. And then you have the local players. And I honestly think that the non-national brands have a leg up. I think just from a branding and messaging standpoint, they can say, we're local, we live here, this is how this goes. You know what I mean?
Google wants to show local competitors. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
I really thought you were going to say, competitors are divided into two camps. You got jerks and you got morons. And I don't know why I thought you were going to say that. That's not our internal language. Shut this podcast down. Anyway, okay. So, look, and the other thing I want to point out too, so everybody thinks SEO is all about keywords. How long is the keyword list we use again? 35, right? It's look, guys, it's like keywords is it's important. It's not a huge part of the strategy piece here because honestly, if you're an investor, and this is a big place where investing differs from SEO and other industries. You know what your keywords are. I can almost guarantee you could sit down and off the top of your head come up with most of them. I'm not trying to be cagey by hiding them. Mm-hmm. It's just, if you think of 20, you pretty much got 80% of the market there. And that's just kind of the way that it is. So we're not even going to talk about keywords the whole time when we come back to it. But so that's strategy. Obviously, there's a lot to look at. But I think the big takeaways here are understand where you're at so you can understand where you want to go. Understand what your competition's doing. Look at your top 3 competitors and think, are they doing anything massively different? Make sure your tracking is in place so that you can track your progress going forward, right? So that's kind of it in a broad way. Let's move on to local SEO. And local SEO is typically when we work with an investor, this is the first place we start. It's the thing we kind of nail down before we do anything else because it's vitally important. So can you explain to me, because we're going to get into on-page SEO next, right? So what is local SEO? How does it differ from on-page SEO? And why is it so important? So what is it? How, why is it different? And why is it so important? I'm going to throw 3 questions at you at once because one question is not enough. Let's start with what is it? What is local SEO?
The goal of local SEO is to establish your business firmly where you are, tied to an address, a phone number. You want this NAP, this name, address, and phone number to be firmly established. And there's a handful, and it's consistency as well. So my business is here. Here's its name. You can find it in all of these places, and it's always pointing back to me, right? So it's firmly establishing your business where you are.
Oh my! I just thought of the best metaphor for this. All right?
I see you start to grin. I'm like, here it comes.
Imagine your business is trying to find a girlfriend. So it goes on a chat room. Remember chat rooms? And it's like when you go into a chat room, it's like 17. You go into a chat room and everyone's like, age, sex, location. You want to know how old are you? Are you a boy or a girl? And where are you located? So you're like, yeah, I'm 17. I'm a boy and I'm in New Paltz or whatever. And then someone else can be like, oh, you're in New Paltz? I'm in New Paltz. Let's meet at the mall. We'll go to Hot Topic. We'll dye our hair purple and we'll go on a date. Anyway, so it's like that. You got to tell Google where you are. Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Hey,
yeah.
Feel free to use that metaphor for all your clients. That's amazing. Okay. So how do we tell Google where we are? We want Google to know where we are so it can show us to sellers in our market. What does that actually entail? How do I do that? Do I send them a letter and I'm like, this is where I'm located? How do I do that?
Yeah. Well, I would start with your contacts page on your website. Make sure that you actually have an address on it along with your phone number. A lot of people don't. I do get a lot of pushback in this industry with people that don't want to put their address.
Well, let's bring this up. It's such a common question. So I'm Doug Oreo, the real estate investor from earlier, Oreo Home Buyers. Thank you for having me on.
Yes.
Now, here I got to be honest. I'm a little bit nervous because I work out of my house. I don't have an office. I work in my house. So like, is it bad if I show Google? I mean, what if Google looks at my house and they judge me and they don't think I'm cool and they don't send anyone to Oreo home buyers? What should I do?
Yeah, I have this conversation all the time, Doug. So there's a lot of businesses that don't need a physical brick and mortar space, with a sign out front to actually conduct business. I'm in my basement right now doing business.
Very unprofessional. I didn't want to say anything, but there you go.
So you don't need your own, office space. Although having said that, there's the address that's on your homepage, or on your contact us page. A lot of people want to just throw up a PO box, a USPS box, or one of those box stores, those mailbox stores.
UPS. Post office. Yeah.
Okay, so there's two ideas. I think before we go any further, I have to say what we're talking about is a Google My Business listing. We can't really talk about the issues with one without talking about the other.
So I'm going to give a blanket statement. Use your actual address. Don't use a PO box. Don't use a UPS box. Okay. And when we talk about using them, what we are talking about is you are setting up a page with Google.
Yes.
So break this down because this is really one of the most important local SEO things you can do. Mm-hmm. What is Google My Business? Mm-hmm. What's it going to cost me? Doug Oreo from Oreo Home Buyers, etc. Like, tell me what this is.
Google My Business, again, is a free listing that you create, that you own, and that you verify with Google. This is how those little push pins get on the map whenever you search anything and a Google map comes up. And, in particular, there's, we're talking about how do those businesses get on that map. Now, they can get there in one of two ways. You can either create one and say, this is me. Again, we've established our address and this is me, Google, verify me, it's for real. Or there are a bunch of businesses with unverified pages out there, right? Unverified things, because Google's gotten smart. They're like, well, I can't just have it blank because the store hasn't written in and said, I'm here. It has access to all kinds of, databases and other sources that are going to feed into Google and say, okay, there's stores here, right? So having said that, and then you can see whether or not those have been verified by the owner. If anyone has ever left a Google review for someone, that's what we're talking about. You can't get a Google review unless there is a Google My Business listing. Mm. And unless you've declared that as your business and said, this is my business, then you can't even respond to those reviews as the owner.
And this is very important for a variety of reasons. This page by itself can send you leads, right? But probably more important than that, this is the mechanism by which you give Google your address so that they say, okay, cool, you are located here. Therefore, you are going to, like if I type in real estate investor New Paltz, I don't know if New Paltz is my new place, random place. So anyway, real estate investor New Paltz, the way it knows who's in New Paltz is by looking at primarily their Google My Business listings, also some other stuff like the contact us page. What else goes into local SEO? Is that it? Like, do I just have to set up my Google My Business? What else is entailed in this kind of phase of this?
Yeah, so there's a couple steps. You would set up that Google My Business, you'd verify it, and there's ways you can find out how to do that online. That listing contains information that you want to have optimized for you. So there's a description, there's different categories of the type of business that you are. There's certain phone numbers and tracking that you can actually set up. Remember earlier we talked about foundationally, there's some tracking information that you're going to want to add to your URL such that you can see people that have come from this listing. So you can again track the value and the quality of leads that are coming in from this link. I would say too that once you're verified through Google, and again, they do this in a couple different ways. Typically in this industry, I see them doing it through postcards. So Dan, they're going to mail a postcard, or sorry, Doug, who are we? Doug Oreo?
You can call me Dan. My friends call me Doug. It doesn't matter. It's fine.
So Google's going to mail a postcard to your house because you can imagine the chaos that Google has been dealing with over the years with people trying to claim competitors or businesses that aren't their own. So now Google actually does this through snail mail or phone occasionally. So they're going to verify you. So once you're verified, that's a pretty powerful position. Like I said, one is you can reply to Google reviews on your site. And then another, you can use additional tools to help get your business listing onto databases and sources across the web. And that sends a very strong SEO local SEO signal. Okay. So we're talking things like super pages and yellow pages and a bunch of different databases that you've never heard of will all take that verification from Google and allow you to, kind of make that consistent across the web.
Okay. So we're kind of
strong signal.
Confirming things in multiple places. So it's just like if you hear something, like 5 people walk by you and they're like, something just exploded down the street. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Something just exploded.
Oh, geez. Stop. No, but also, so it sends that strong signal. Your business is going to be found consistently where Google would expect it to be found. And also, I would take into account it's a Google property, right? So it takes up space within a search results page. You've got that little map in the middle sometimes, right? Even though the goal here isn't about driving people to your doorstep, your home, it's really about the signal it sends to Google. Now, Google has put a lot of new bells and whistles to Google My Business in recent years. And I think with Google Plus going away, that's kind of what's happening. So this is a very important place to make sure that you're active in and you own your listing and everything's consistent, right? We're talking, if you're on a road, it's either ROAD or RD period. You want that stuff consistent. You want to make sure that you are the same business everywhere. It's on your website, it's on your Facebook page, it's on your Google My Business listing, and you've been able to propagate that
out. Are you an investor who wants to dominate your local market? Do you want more leads and deals online? Then download your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint absolutely free at www.adwordsnerds.com/gift. What are you waiting for? Go to www.adwordsnerds.com/gift right now to get your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint.
So once it's propagated and I've told Google and a million different people kind of where I'm at, that brings us to the next phase of the cycle, which is on-page SEO. So when we talk about, local, Google My Business, all these third-party websites or whatever, none of that was actually like on my website. You mentioned the contact us page, but like pretty much we're all elsewhere. So now we get into like my actual website, oreohomebuyers.com. I wonder if that exists. I'm going to look it up. Anyway.
Amazing.
So
I really want it to.
What is on-page SEO? How do I do that? What's involved in that?
So this is where we're talking about 2 pieces of on-page. You've got what the users are, what the visitors are reading and seeing when they come to your site. And then there's some metadata on the back end as well. That's on your site. So those are things like titles and descriptions of each page, right?
Okay.
And then, so each page has a title and a description, what's on this page. You want to make sure that that's all customized and makes sense and coordinates with the copy and content that's on the page. And then you have the content on the page. So that you've got a title and you've got a subtitle and you have the paragraphs of content that are on the page. Now, in this industry, I break that up into, we have geo pages, we call them internally. Jeremiah and I call them geo pages. So those are, specifically the cities that you're targeting, that your website is targeting, where you want to buy houses, where these homeowners are. And you want to make sure that you're showing up and optimized for people putting in those keywords, right? That list of 35 within those locations. We want to make sure that it's really clear where you do business, where you're targeting, and who your audience is, so that when they come to that website, it's no one has to think, right? You've got that 3 seconds to really get the point across. Yes, I buy houses. I buy it for cash. I do it this way, and I do it where you are.
How do you decide what kind of geo pages you want to build? Like, how do I decide what cities I want to build or what pages I need?
Which markets you're targeting?
Yeah, I guess it's just like, how do I decide where I want to target? Is that an SEO question or is that a real estate investing question, I guess?
I typically, when I have that conversation where honestly, it kind of depends on the metro and kind of where you are. Sometimes it's an area, sometimes those cities have parts of town that are actually their own, can kind of behave as like a target market all themselves. But really the conversation I have is, okay, well, where do you want to target? And put your real estate hat on and try to get out your crystal ball and try to see where you want to land on top when market conditions are in your favor such that that's where you want to show up. It's a little bit of a guessing game, but I think it's helpful to think ahead for one thing. Now, having said that, I have clients in, say, rural Texas where there's one city. They don't have, it's not a metro, it's kind of a city in and of itself. There's no surrounding cities and towns necessarily. Those are, that could be you. That could be your situation. I've got one city and that's what I'm going after. If I'm in, I don't know, New York City or some large cities in, say, New Jersey or something, those have subregions where you're going to reach out and that's where you want to show. I like to target this on page to like a list of manageable handful. We're talking like 5 or so at first, so that you can really, apply these tactics and strategies and kind of see how they're, target. So for example, Carrot makes it really easy to dump a whole list of 50 cities in by zip code or something, and it'll kind of spit out some pages. But I don't see that as really targeting those areas. You need to take that to the next level. You need to customize those pages. You need to write your own content. You need to really, focus. If I land on your page and you serve everybody, I might go to a competitor, right?
Yeah, the big thing to remember about these kind of pages is that they have to be unique and they have to be high quality. So if you have basically the same page, or just with the place name swapped out,
right,
it doesn't actually do much for you.
Yeah.
/ anything necessarily. So I know you talked about, we've got what the pages say, like what the content that's on the pages, and then you've got kind of the code piece of it, what you called metadata, so like the titles and the descriptions, and divide it into a percentage for people. Like, how important is the content versus the code? Or can I do one and not the other? Like, how important are these two pieces comparatively?
Yeah, so I would say that the on page, the content that people are reading, is super important to the visitor. It's got to match what we usually call searcher intent. So someone's searching for you, for your services, that page needs to match what they're looking for. And that's what's going to be ranked. That's a ranking factor. The metadata, the code on the back end, these titles and descriptions are not ranking factors, meaning I can't just say, show me for this stuff. But you should consider that to be your ad copy. So this is what's going to show when someone searches for these keywords, and you've got your 9, 10 results on the page. The title and the description is what someone's going to see. So this needs to be, well done. First of all, also, if you don't put anything in this metadata, Google will just kind of grab some stuff off the page. It won't leave it blank. Obviously, we don't see blank listing, but it will just pick some stuff off the page. It'll pick on a run-on sentence with some ... at the end. You want that to be compelling, and you want that to be competitive within your space.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important. I think it's important for click-through rate. It's not a rank. You can't say Google rank me for this stuff. I'm not. So.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is. I think there are people out there who they're going to be able to wrap their heads around making their pages good and writing really good content, but the code part's going to be kind of beyond them. And then, vice versa, there are going to be people who are like, hey, I'm really comfortable kind of going through like the Carrot interface or the REI Black Book interface and like kind of tweaking all the numbers, but I hate writing, right? So I think it's like whatever you can do, but eventually these are, the chocolate and peanut butter, they go together. They're pretty critical. So we built out pages. The pages are good. The code is good on the back end. I mean, this is a very deep topic. So we don't have time to like get into every single thing, but I think just knowing that has to be there, and that like a lot of these kind of out of the box things do a lot of this for you. Like, you have an Investor Carrot site. It does a lot of this SEO stuff for you, but there is still work to do. Even though it's 50% done out of the box, it's still 50%. You still have to provide that other 50%, right? But let's move on to the final phase of this, which is links and building links. So describe for people like who are just maybe a little unclear on this, like what is a link and why are they so important? So
a link is just by definition is another website linking to you. So it's any other website that contains, is linking back to you, a hyperlink back to your website. And it's important. It sends a really strong, you can imagine if you're Google and you have to make choices and a really quick decision how to order all the websites in the whole index that's been crawled, you have to put them in order really quickly. A really strong ranking vector still remains how many other sites are linking to that website. It's kind of a vote of confidence. It validates your website. It really is a score and a scoreboard. It's even some of the major SEO website tools, such as Moz, calls something a domain authority. It says how authoritative is this website, and it's pretty much just based on linking, inbound links that are coming to your website. It even says how is your site an authority site. Let's see how many people are linking to it. So we can create a website today, throw it out there. If no one links to it, it's literally not going to be crawled the same as a site with a lot of links. So if you think of sites being crawled, you have all the websites and all the pages in a big diagram. Google is going to follow each of those links, and it's going to crawl those links and index those sites and then decide how to rank them in order.
Yeah. And I think it's like, this is interesting to me because it's like from the very beginning, this is what made Google, right? Like Google's patent,
yes,
or their PhD thesis or whatever was on using links this way. So links have been built into the Google formula forever.
Right.
So it's one part of SEO, but it's so important. We've broken it out into its own stage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I think links are probably the single biggest kind of deal maker, deal breaker for an investor's SEO. So can we explain a little bit like what a good link is versus a bad link? Because links are also kind of unique in the sense that like they're good for your business, but doing it the wrong way can actually hurt you. And it's kind of unique in that way. So can you explain good links versus bad?
So a good link would be possibly a publication, like a known publication, choosing to write about you, interview you, write about you, link to your website, talk about your business. We're talking a newspaper publication, a magazine, something like that, talking you up and linking back to your website. That would be fantastic. Other local businesses linking to you would be also fantastic. It would send a nice, strong signal, meaning kind of, again, grounding yourself where you are, where you're located, having local links, confirm that, reaffirm that with Google. Yes, they're located in the city. Another type of high quality link would be people within your industry. So reinforcing again that message that you do what you say you do, you know what I mean? Like maybe a mortgage company, or if you flip houses, maybe partners that are your roofers or your construction people going in on, like a before and after or something, something super kind of hyper local and specific to what you do. Those are examples. Now, if you are someone that wants to game the system or practice really poor, what they call black hat SEO, you'd say, oh, wait, I just need links. Well, I'm going to build some websites, and all those websites do is link back to me. And I'm not going to really take time to write real content on those sites. It's going to be kind of just junk. And I'm just going to point them all back to myself and then count them. 1, 2, 3, those are called PBNs, or private blog networks. So those exist only to link to sites. Companies will really cheesy. You can't buy links. Buying links is right in the rule book for Google. They say you can't buy links, but there's a lot of companies out there that you can buy hundreds of links on these really junky PBNs. And you can imagine that sends a negative signal, and that can work against you. That can hurt how Google perceives you. If all of the links coming into your website are all trashy stuff that was most likely paid for, they're junk.
This reminds me of, there's some movie, it's like tween movie. Okay. And I can't remember, I very briefly, but the plot of this movie is like this kid, like he's like a nerd and he's getting picked on, and he like wants to date the real popular girl. So he like pays the popular girl to like pretend to be his girlfriend. And all of a sudden he becomes super popular, and he's like the king of the school. And he's like, it's like, and then, eventually, it gets found out that she tells everyone, like, he paid me to be his girlfriend.
Yes.
And you all fell for it. And of course, the whole house of cards falls apart.
But she falls in love with him first, though.
What movie is this? You know what I'm talking about?
I think it's all the 90s teen movies. They all there was more than one for sure. Patrick Dempsey was in it. Patrick Dempsey was in it.
Probably. Yeah. And this is a look, you do not want to be the person that had to pay someone to be their boyfriend or girl. Okay. You want to go out and get a real boyfriend or girlfriend by doing the work, making sure you clean yourself up, hygiene, dressing, be charming, etc. Right? So it's like, it's exactly the same thing. You're buying a thing to fool Google into thinking you're popular.
You can't buy Twitter followers and make yourself look cool on the Twitter. You can't buy, I mean, you can, but you really shouldn't.
But it is not cool. Let us be clear.
Instagram followers, do not pay for those either. That's kind of a bunch of garbage. So no, we know this. We know we're beginning to know bots from real people.
Yes. You have to get your Instagram followers the same way as everyone else by taking pictures of your butt and posting them online. All right? This is how it's done. Okay? I don't make the rules. Those are the rules. So yes, basically, anytime you are exchanging money for links, this is pretty bad. Now, there are like some rare cases. So for example, you might, join the Chamber of Commerce and pay to join the Chamber of Commerce. They might link to you. That's fine. Same thing with like Better Business Bureau or whatever.
Exactly.
Great. But mostly as a general rule of thumb, good thing to remember. We're going to talk about PBNs in our next episode when we talk about common SEO scams.
Yes.
To be really, really critical. So I don't want to belabor the point. So like, how do I get these? Like, how do I get more of the good kind? If I can't pay for them, how do I get them?
It's not easy. That's the bad news. The bad news is it's not easy. The good news is it's worth it. It's worth it in the end. A lot of times it comes down to the relationships that you have and relationships that you can build locally with businesses. You can kind of reciprocate links, but again, that's even a little bit frowned upon. Like I'll link to you if you link to me. That can't be all your links. That's just going to look like garbage too, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's not easy. It's relationships. It's creating content that's worth publishing in other places that can link back to you. It's making a name for yourself. There is another way that I kind of like to promote sometimes, believe it or not, that sort of feels like you're paying for links, but it's a little bit different. And that's sponsorships. So I really actually do recommend that my clients look at local opportunities to sponsor something that they already care about, that's giving back to the community, and that is a site that will actually, link back to you. So even though it's 2019, it comes down to, you can't put your logo on the back of a little league shirt, but it's going to do a bunch of things, right? It's going to help a team, it's going to help your local community. It's going to get your name out there. Websites will then link back to you. They will thank you. They will thank you for that sponsorship. And that's kind of its own little category of kind of paying for links. If you can find ways to do that, that's within your industry, that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that this is another thing that I think investors very commonly misunderstand is that not all links are created equal. And if you can get links from all over and they're great, but the best links are real estate specific. So asking, for example, a contractor that you might hire a lot, like, hey, can we set up a page on your site where it's like, hey, I work with these investors and, like maybe I'll write the content for you and you just link to me and I'll link to you. And like these kind of like relationships within your industry are really critical and really valuable sources of links that, again, most investors are not going to do the work to get. It's kind of part of the reason that it makes it valuable. I mean, I want to wrap this up because we're going a little bit long, but I want to think about, there's a lot of stuff. And I mean, we've barely scratched the surface, right? So for an investor that wants to get started with their SEO and they want to do it right, give us some real, like concrete, like places to start. Like what's a task that I can actually get done? It's small enough that it's concrete. I can do it, and it's going to put me on the path to success long term.
There's probably a way that you can do a little bit in each of the 4 categories that we just talked about. So the first one, strategy, I would make sure that you have your Google Analytics set up. It's ready to go. You're collecting data on who's coming and going from your site and what's driving traffic. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. I would start there. the Google My Business, that's something that you can take on. Again, use an actual physical address, get that verified. We didn't really get into the tactics of if Google kind of rejects you or won't verify you, there's things you can do, but that's another conversation. But, see what you can do about getting that Google My Business verification. Don't just take content rate, kind of the canned content that comes with your CMS. There's, thinking through that a little bit and customizing it is also a good place to start. Mm-hmm. And then thinking about the relationships that you have, other websites that would link to you, that you can partner with, that you can create real content, real authentic content with, and build those links.
Right. I think that's great. I mean, I think it's, again, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can take it a step at a time. Don't be afraid. Obviously we do this for a living. So, I'm biased, but don't be afraid to reach out, do a strategy session with us. If you want to talk this through with someone, mm-hmm. you can go to adwordsnerds.com/strategy. It's adwordsnerds.com/strategy. That'll set you up with a strategy session. You'll be able to talk to someone who does this all the time. So it's like you can talk through this process, figure out what makes sense for you, but just take it one step at a time. Commit to doing one thing. And when you finish that thing, commit to doing one other small thing and just keep doing that until you're rich. And there you go. What I mean? my friend Nick always says it's the process, not the product, right? So it's like, he always says like work the system and the goal line comes to you. And it really is the case. It's like, just focus on doing the stuff you're supposed to be doing and everything else will kind of shake out. If you, like me, would pay literally any amount of money to listen to Patti Dalessio talk. I have news for you, friend, because this is not our last episode together. We're doing another episode next week. All of September is SEO month. By the way, I didn't even mention this. We are giving away close to $9,000 of SEO tools and coaching and courses and materials and all and sundry, all sorts of SEO stuff. But everything. So we are giving away so much stuff, critical tools that we use for our clients, hours and hours and hours of free educational material, coaching calls, one-on-one call with Patti, one-on-one call with Tom Kroll, one of the most successful real estate investing coaches of all time. Amazing stuff. So the way you are going to do that, the way you are going to get there, the way you are going to enter yourself in this contest, you are going to go to the REI Marketing Nerds Facebook group, which you can get to at adwordsnerds.com/group, adwordsnerds.com/group, I am group. No, just group. Or just go on Facebook, type in REI Marketing Nerds. It is in there. You will see it. It's the top pinned post all of September. If you're listening to this outside of September, I'm sorry. It's a September only, but it's free to enter. You can enter multiple times and you can get $9,000 worth of free, awesome stuff. Go and do that. Patti Dalessio, my wonderful friend, as always, you are a delight and a testimony to your industry and so much more. So thank you so much for coming and helping us improve SEO for real estate investors. We're not done. Next week, there's going to be more. So thank you again so much for being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's all you got?
That's all I got.
I give that kind of outro, and that's what you give. You give me an awesome.
How come we don't have a pun for SEO timber?
I've been trying to make it work, and SEO timber is really weird because they O into the P. Anyway, we're gonna do it. I'm gonna see you guys next week. Let us know if you need anything. This is REI Marketing Nerds and SEO and IPA. And as always, this is our catchphrase for SEO and IPA. As always, please optimize responsibly.
Optimize responsibly.
There you go. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Okay. Bye.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.